Shabbat Shalom. It is good to be together this weekend. If I look a little different to you, perhaps, it's because with Memorial Day weekend now upon us, you might see my anxiety starting to rise. Now, of course, why is my anxiety starting to rise on this Memorial Day weekend? There can only be one answer. And that is, with Memorial Day weekend here, it means that camping season is around the corner. And I already feel the anxiety starting to build. Now, those of you who may remember the ill-fated camping experience from last summer, it was last August and we got a brand new tent, one of these easy-to-put-up tents. And of course, that would have made us intense. All right. We got one of these easy-to-put-up tents. I've got a load of them, but I wouldn't use them all. And sure enough, we went to the campsite. And, you know, it's one of those you practically just pull a lever and all of a sudden the tent pops open on its own. And we had a wonderful evening. We barbecued. All of us, including the family dog, squeezed into that tent. We made one crucial mistake, of course. We left the dog food outside. Yes, we left the dog food outside at the campground. So sure enough, as we're all there and night has fallen, we hear first a little noise coming from outside the tent. And then we hear a little more, and a little more, and a little more. And I assure you, not many minutes after that first small noise, there must have been 6 to 8 Tyrannosaurus Rexes outside of this tent, feasting on our dog food. Now, thank God, I think Rebecca and I invested in a good tent because it kept us safe from those Tyrannosaurus Rexes that were outside. In a moment of brilliance, your rabbi reached over for his car keys because, you know, this was such intense camping that the car was actually right next door to the tent. And I just hit the brake, you know, the lock button on the car, because what happens when you hit the lock button? The noise goes off, right? And chase those Tyrannosaurus Rexes right out of there. So the next morning we wake up and we have a very nice breakfast. And of course, the way they get you to buy this tent is that it's very easy to put up. You just pull a lever and all of a sudden the tent pops open. What they don't tell you is that the time you save in putting up the tent, you then have to invest in trying to put the tent away. So there we struggled for over an hour trying to put this tent away. When finally we got the idea, just throw the whole tent in the car. We'll drive home, and somehow at home, we'll put the tent away. Now I'll tell you, not long after pulling up home, with all the stuff we had to drag in from the car and the tent still needing to be put away, somehow I had an appointment at the synagogue that I had to rush off to. And luckily, Rebecca, with the help, I think, of YouTube, figured out how to put away this tent. So sure enough, if I look a little anxious to you, it's because tenting season, camping season, is now upon us. Our Torah, of course, speaks often of tents. We are, after all, a nomadic people. The first time we really hear the Torah speak of tents, it has to do with Avram and Sarah. And of course, Avram and Sarah were living there in the desert when they were visited by 3 angels. And what did Abraham and Sarah do in that moment? Sarah rushed into the tent to prepare all sorts of food and drink to welcome these strangers. And Abraham rushed out to greet them. From this story in the Torah, from this example of where Abraham and Sarah welcomed strangers into their tent, our rabbis come to teach us of the mitzvah of hachnasat orchim, of welcoming guests into our community. Another story appears just a little bit from now, in a week or two, a couple weeks now, we're going to read in our Torah the story of another tent. Of course, we have the story of Balak and Bilam and that evil prophet who goes to curse the Jewish people. And there he stands upon a cliff and he sees all the tents of the Israelites below him. And instead of words of curse coming out of his mouth, what is it that the evil prophet said? Matovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkenotecha Yisrael. Ma tovu, how good are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel. And our rabbis say, what turned Bilam's mind? What made him praise us instead of curse us? And the rabbis come to teach is that in that moment, Bilam saw that our tents were lined up with their openings staggered, one next to the other, so that one tent couldn't look upon and into the doorway of the other tent. That is to say, our rabbis come to teach that in that moment, the evil prophet saw the tzniut, saw the modesty of our ancestors. And we come to learn in this moment that we shouldn't gaze so much on what other people are doing in their bedroom, because tzniut, modesty, is one of the central values of the Jewish people. When we talk about tents and our ancestors, we talk about the value of hachnasat orchim, of welcoming guests. And we talk about the value of tzniut, of modesty, of not caring what's going on in other people's houses, and especially in other people's bedrooms. Several months ago, under the leadership of now President Jerry Fishman, we began this inclusion committee with the goal of asking ourselves as a congregation, how can we do a better job of making all those who have perhaps previously felt excluded from our community feel more at home, feel welcome, feel excited to be part of Congregation Shaar Tzedek, to help us make ourselves an even greater Kehila Kedosha, an even holier community. And of course, as I think this week about how we're supposed to focus on opening our tents in order to be welcome, but also closing our tents at the right time in order to be modest, I can't help but think of how, over the many years, we have closed our doors to the members of the LGBT plus community. Now, this is perhaps an acronym with which you're not familiar. LGBT plus, LGBTQ plus, LGBTQIA. There are all sorts of extensions now to the acronym, but by and large it stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual. Sometimes we add the Q for either queer or questioning. And now we just put a plus onto the end to include everybody else who is in that broad camp. And as we focus on these two values this week and thinking about those tents, we've done a pretty good job of closing our tents in welcoming to the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transsexual, queer plus community. But we've done an awfully good job of wondering what exactly is happening in their homes and in their bedrooms. Unfortunately, when it comes to the LGBTQ plus community, we've done just the opposite of what we've supposed to have been doing over these last many years. And so now with this inclusion committee, we're asking the question, how can we do a better job of welcoming them greater into our community and not caring so much what other people do in their homes? How can we judge less and welcome more? Now, in our Torah portion this week, it also talks about tents. It talks about the tent of meeting. And of course, this is the tent in which Moshe Rabbeinu, used to go to achieve that relationship with God and to hear what God wants of us. It was into that tent that Moses went to feel God's presence and to hear God's voice. And in our Torah portion this week in Parashat Naso, it actually comes to tell us of how the Levites were charged with the task of erecting that tent of meeting and of taking it down. And whenever our ancestors would travel on their way from Mitzrayim to Eretz Yisrael, on their way from Egypt to the land of Israel, it was the Levites' job to make sure that the tent got taken down properly and that once again the tent got put up properly in order to achieve this connection with God. Now, on one hand, I know that if Rebecca and I were to put that tent back up again, it would be a little easier than the last time. And taking it down might be a little bit easier than the last time. And if we were to go camping over and over and over again, of course it would be easier to put up the tent and to take it down again. Each and every time becoming easier and easier to put up that tent and to take it down, though I have to tell you, the Tyrannosaurus Rexes still live in the woods. But that's what our Levites did. They got better and better each time as they journeyed through the wilderness about putting up this tent and about taking it down. This process of journeying we now call halakha. Often translated as Jewish law, halakha literally means the way of journeying with God. Our rabbis in the conservative movement and the Committee on Jewish Law and Standards of the Rabbinical Assembly have come to teach us that there are times when certain values trump other values, when certain laws supersede other laws. And the Committee on Jewish Law and Standards has come in our own day to say that the value of kavod habriut, honoring God's creation, that the value of human dignity trumps most other rabbinic laws. Not Torah laws, but rabbinic laws. And as a result of our commitment to kavod habriut, as a result of our commitment to human dignity, conservative rabbis are now permitted to perform gay marriage. And I will tell you, and I know I speak for Rabbi Dallin when I say he and I are both thrilled at the opportunity to welcome two Jews into our congregation and into our people with the bonds of marriage, whether they be heterosexual or whether they be part of the LGBTQ plus community. Rabbi Dallin and I will perform the wedding of two Jews. So let the word out. Congregation Shaare Zedek is fully welcoming to the LGBTQ plus community. And on this Shabbat, as we really begin to think about tents, I ask you, what else can we do to open our tent wider? And to whom must we work even harder to open our tents? This coming Thursday evening, I'm proud to tell you that as part of our Berman Night of Jewish Learning, we're going to be hosting a panel of representatives from the LGBTQ plus community to help educate us and inspire us, to help us ask and answer the question, what can we do to be more like Abraham and Sarah, who open their tent to strangers, to angels? What can we do to be more like our ancestors whom Bilam looked upon and said, Ma tovu o'alecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael, how goodly are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel. This Shabbat of Parashat Naso, I ask you to come join the journey of taking down tents and putting them back up, that we may each and every day, each and every year, journey on a path toward getting closer to God and understanding what it is that God wants of us in our own day and age. The more we journey together, the easier it will be. What can we do to cast our tent even wider? And what can we do to bring our relationship with God ever closer? I think one of the ways, just as our rabbis teach us, is kavod habriut, is making sure we extend derech eretz, kindness, chesed, that we extend human dignity to all those who deserve it. This Shabbat of Parashat Naso, may God bless us with the wisdom of opening our doors. May God bless us with the wisdom of knowing when to keep our mouths shut. And may God bless us with the strength, the passion, the wisdom, the human dignity of welcoming into our community the LGBTQ plus community who deserve to be among our ranks. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may this be God's will. And let us say together, Amen.